Good evening and welcome to a new episode of Mishkat al-Tanwir. Is Islam a religion of violence? Or is there a conspiracy against it by parties who want it to appear as a religion of violence, force, and terrorism? Is the conflict in our world today a conflict over land or a conflict over the meaning of religion itself? The truth that many do not pay attention to is that the major battle the world is fighting right now is over the image of Islam in human consciousness, not just over geography and strategic goals. Let us, my dear friends, pose the question and try to answer it. Who determines the meaning and nature of Islam today? Two narratives, versions, or visions are clashing. One portrays Islam as a religion of clash, confrontation, and violence, while another restores it to its true origin as a religion of mercy, peace, cooperation, and mutual understanding. Here emerges the role of a large, important, and pivotal reformist project led by the great thinker, our Professor Ali Muhammad Al-Sharafa Al-Hammadi, running in parallel with the crucial experiences of countries like Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, and Indonesia. This convergence between thought and the state, between the Quranic text and reality, is what created a new model that tells the world Islam is not a threat. It is a guarantee for security, stability, and global peace. Let us look at Indonesia as a model of a country in Southeast Asia, and a model for the national civil state in the heart of the Islamic world. What happened is that it is the largest country in terms of population, or the largest Islamic country. In 1940, 8 years before the establishment of Israel, Sukarno was nominated to lead the country at the famous Banjarmasin Conference. Indonesia was defined as the abode of Islam, but not in the narrow, closed, coercive, and exclusionary traditional sense, but rather as a civil, pluralistic, national state striving for freedom, prosperity, independence, and flourishing. Then came the Pancasila philosophy in the 1945 Constitution to affirm that the state respects religion and supports the spread of its values without imposing them, protecting pluralism rather than suppressing it. From that time until today, for nearly a century, Indonesia has presented a living model of Islam within a stable, pluralistic civil state. Well, my dear friends, let's take a quick look at how the battle for identity played out there. The state versus the organization, the state versus the group. This means the model was not born easily. An exclusionary, traditional, takfiri, excommunicating group appeared, ironically named Dar al-Islam in 1948, another irony being that this coincided with the creation of Israel, which called for the establishment of a religious government according to the closed, exclusionary vision of the takfiris, and entered into a clash with Sukarno that escalated to an assassination attempt. The conflict here was not a conflict over politics or rule, it was a conflict over the definition of Islam itself, behind which was a heavy question. Is Islam a religion that leads to a comprehensive, pluralistic human state, or a tool to impose closed, coercive, authoritarian power? The same scene was repeated in Egypt when the Egyptian state faced groups planning and seeking to bring it down in favor of a takfiri, fake religious, coercive, arrogant, and extremist religious project. And just as the Dar al-Islam group was the mother that spawned all armed takfiri groups in Indonesia and Asia, the Muslim Brotherhood was the mother that birthed all terrorism and takfiri groups in Egypt and the Middle East in general. Let us see, my dear friends, how takfir and terrorism transitioned from being local to global. At that time, the groups were no longer local. Rather, they emerged in the crucible of the Afghan war, where people from all countries met. Egyptians with Indonesians, Bangladeshis, Pakistanis, etc. They formed transnational, international organizations, got to know one another, and shaped these cross-border organizations. This was the beginning of global terrorism, Al-Qaeda, and its affiliated groups in Southeast Asia and elsewhere. These had branches in Malaysia, the Philippines, Thailand, and Singapore, carrying out major terrorist operations aside from the globally known ones. There were the very famous bombings of the churches in Indonesia in the year 2000, and the famous Bali bombings in 2002. These were not random. They targeted the state, the economy, and religious coexistence. Let us see why they targeted Christians. This was one of the most dangerous features of takfiri thought in Egypt and Indonesia. The lives, places of worship, and properties of Christians were a primary and direct target. The importance of our Professor Al-Sharafa's reformist project is confirmed here, especially in his recently published book, Islam Testifies to the Validity of the Christian Faith, because it presents a clear Quranic vision on one of the most important files and issues: the unity of divine messages, respect for beliefs, human coexistence, and honoring Jesus Christ and the Virgin Mary, and because it dismantles the roots of takfir and violence from the foundation. My dear friends, What brings these three countries together as a model, the UAE, Indonesia, and Egypt? The answer is that they all faced the same danger and made the same decision, protecting the national state. Egypt engaged in a direct confrontation with armed Takfiri groups and paid a heavy price in the blood of its sons. Indonesia confronted cross-border terrorist networks and preserved its pluralistic, civil, and national model, which is closer to the Quranic vision. The UAE chose the battle of awareness, presented a global model for tolerance, restricted the discourse of hate, contributed to curbing Takfiri and extremist groups in the world, and proved that confrontation is also fought through thought and by establishing a civilizational model. My dear friends, can extremism and Takfir be dismantled? The answer is yes. The evidence for this is the experience that took place in 2012 in Indonesia and lasted for 4 years. I participated in a dialogue program with leaders and heads of extremists inside prisons in Indonesia under the supervision of relevant state institutions. Over years of intellectual work, seminars, meetings, and debates, according to documented figures, about 2,750 out of 3,000 were converted to the correct thought. And before that, I contributed to similar work in Egypt. Therefore, the battle is a battle of understanding, a battle of awareness. Despite all these efforts, the world has not sufficiently appreciated the role played and the sacrifices made by Arab and Islamic countries. Even though they protected the whole world from being besieged by fake religious state models and versions hiding behind religion while practicing takfir, violence, terrorism, killing, and bloodshed, stretching from Southeast Asia to the Levant, Egypt, and Africa. In contrast, international powers and countries helped fuel religious conflicts and supported projects of states based on a fake, expansionist religious foundation. The message becomes clear here. The countries that protected the world from extremism and takfir must be a partner in shaping its future. My dear friends, let us see how our Professor Al-Sharafa represents Islam. He represents it from its original pure source, the Holy Quran. It is a project based on peace, coexistence, and respect for pluralism, as God Almighty said in his Quranic verses. This is what integrates with the experiences of Egypt, Indonesia, and the UAE to create a comprehensive model between thought and practice. Therefore, my dear friends, on the occasion of the visit of the delegation from the Message of Peace Foundation to Indonesia and Malaysia, from Jakarta to Cairo to Abu Dhabi, there is one message. When Islam is understood correctly, it becomes a force of peace, stability, and security. And when the state protects this understanding, it becomes a shield and fortress for the world and humanity. The world today, my dear friends, faces a clear choice. Either it learns from these experiences, or it leaves a void to be filled by extremism, takfir, and terrorism once again. In this choice, the future of the entire world is determined. Peace or chaos. See you soon.